Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Judy Geller, Director of MetalCon, and I'm delighted to welcome you to MetalCon Live. Today's topic, the new technologies the new technologies of metal. And I'm delighted to present Heidi Ellsworth from RoofersCoffeeShop and Mark MacDonald from Sherwin-Williams, who will be today's presenters. But before we start, just a quick reminder that MetalCon registration for 2022 is open. We have a lot planned this year that we can't wait to share with you. We have over 200 exhibitors, 25 learning sessions, pre-show workshops, a new metal building marketplace. We have the Architects Experience, which is our show within the show for architects, designers, and engineers and specifiers. We have new networking opportunities and keynotes by Joseph Newgarden, a winning Indy 500 racer. And we just recently added Joe Lestibrick as a third keynote. He's the founding principal of the Building Science Corporation. He is a dynamic and well-known speaker. You're not going to want to miss him. Also, be sure to bring along your future leaders. We have developed special programming and networking for them. And I can't possibly cover everything we have planned at this year's MetalCon in this quick little intro. So please go on to the metalcon.com website and check it all out for yourself. Be sure to register while early bird prices are still in effect through September 4th. Finally, I just want to give a heads up to our MetalCon exhibitors to mark your calendars for the next MetalCon Live, because it's been developed especially for you. On August 17th, we are going to be covering the insider's unconventional secrets to enhancing your trade show success. So we look forward to seeing our exhibitors then. Finally, if you need technical help, please feel free to reach out to MetalCon support in the chat box. And don't forget to complete today's post-webinar survey in order to earn your AIA LUs for today's session. That's it for me. Over to you, Heidi and Mark.
Great. Thank you so much, Judy, for that introduction. We're both, speaking for Mark and myself, we're both very excited to be here and honored. I'm going to just pop up our screen. And so everybody hopefully should be seeing that right now. And we're off. So again, my name is Heidi Ellsworth, and we are here to talk about the new technologies of metal. There is a lot going on in the world of technology, and it is going to change the industry when it comes to metal contractors, roofing, walls, gutters, sheet metal shops, you name it. And I'm very proud to be here today with Mark MacDonald to talk about that. So first of all, a quick introduction. As Judy already said, I'm the president of RoofersCoffeeShop. We have recently launched MetalCoffeeShop in conjunction with Sherwin-Williams. It is a full site where contractors, the roofing or metal industry overall, can come and get information daily, hourly, by the minute on what's happening in metal, and along with education, doing business, the whole 9 yards. I've been on the advisory board of MetalCon. I'm very happy to be a part of this and to be with MetalCon Live. So now, Mark, let you introduce yourself.
Thank you. Thanks, Judy, for having us both here today. Heidi, thanks for including me in this. I'm really excited about the topics that we're going to go through today. For myself, I've been with Sherwin-Williams for just over a decade. And in that time, I've basically taken on the role of building vendor teams to solve problems and create opportunities for our customers in the metal roofing market. And that's in that space is a lot of what we're going to talk about today. So I'm really excited about this.
Excellent. So we're going to start off, just so we can get to know all of you a little bit better, with our first poll question, which Kaylin is going to launch, I do believe. Kaylin?
Oh, so sorry. Give me 2 minutes, Heidi. I'm going to message you right now.
So I think we'll come back to this poll question. So we want to be respectful of everyone's time. So we'll come back to that here in just 1 second. And we're going to start out with the technology and metal. So we want to just set the base, kind of really talk about what it's been and what we're looking at going. So in starting, many of you know much better than I do the history of metal installers. metal roofs, metal walls, frame buildings, sheet metal shops, you name it. And it is a craft, and it's been a craft where many contractors tend to specialize just in metal. Not always the easiest to get into. So as contractors are looking through that, we have working together. Mark and I actually have been working together on this for about 4 to 5 years. But how do we get more people into metal? Because right now we have some of the most amazing craftsmen and women who are putting on metal roofs, but there's not that many of them. So we saw a new age. There's a new age out there of how to get more metal installed, to get more craftsmen, men and women, and to get more installers, along with getting more companies to sell it up front. The industry has done a great job, Metal Roofing Alliance, MetalCon, of really talking to homeowners, and there is a demand, and that demand is growing. And so how do we get there? How do we meet that demand, and how do we go there? So Mark, maybe talk to us a little bit about this new age and the new technologies that you're seeing out there.
Thanks, Heidi. When we look at the market, it really comes down to job compression, right? So everyone's got a workflow from the sales and marketing of a particular product to estimating that product, and then the furnish and install of that product, or the ordering of that product, and the furnish and install of that product. And those things have been looked at and drilled into by adjacent markets to a large extent. So when we look at the asphalt roofing community, when we look at the remodeling communities, those folks have been looking and peeling those things back quite a bit. In our metal roofing community, not as much. So the good news there is there's a lot to leverage, a lot of technology that already exists that we can take advantage of in our market. And so those topics are things like sales training, for example, that's been in existence for a long time that we just haven't taken advantage of. Sales processes, installation training and processes to bring forward in those same kind of common training platforms is an idea that should be looked at. When we look at bidding and estimating metal roof, that in and of itself is something that people have looked at and across other market spaces quite in depth, and we're just now we're able to take advantage of some of those technologies, which is exciting. When we look at visualization, there's a lot of the remodeling community that is not an alien concept to that community at all. That's been in place for some time, and so there's a lot to mine there. There's new partnerships that we can bring to the table. In addition to that, you mentioned online networking and communities. I think a lot of other groups have really taken advantage of that and built very, very large vendor communities that network. And then, where the sum becomes, or the total becomes greater than the sum of its parts, when you build those type of vendor communities, we can discover new things we can take advantage of. And the metal roofing community, I think, that momentum is starting to build. We're starting to see some of those vendor communities coming together, and we're starting to see some of the manufacturers taking advantage of some of those new communities that are being built. So that's very, very exciting.
Yeah. And you know what, Mark, I agree. It feels like, we see it. We see the numbers and the data is that other markets and other types of roofing products, other type of siding and wall products, they have been doing this very well for a long time. They have put together training programs, but the complexity of metal has kind of slowed that process on metal. And so really looking at that now, that's our whole goal, is to be able to form these online communities where they can meet, they can talk, they can learn, bring all the training that it can be virtual and in person, and kind of bring the technologies to now make that big change. So as we're looking at the state of labor, which I think is on everybody's mind. So when you're looking at what is happening in the metal roofing industry, it is happening everywhere, across construction, across every platform you can think of. There is I was listening to a thing this morning, Mark, on airlines. They are looking for labor. They're looking for skilled labor. So really being able to develop an industry that uses technology, that uses talks to the next generation, makes it exciting. Those are the types of things that are going to make that change in any trade. And metal is at the top. They need to, the next generation and the folks that are out there, I need to understand that this is not as hard as some people may think. And we need to get past that gap in labor. For myself, I'm very involved with National Roofing Contractors Association. Mark Sherwin-Williams is also involved with NRCA, and we are seeing a huge amount of CTE, career technical education initiatives with Skills USA teaching these, and even bigger pro certification, which is a certification program for installers. And the metal installation or pro certification just came out. So for metal roofing, and they're working on metal walls, that's going to make a big difference. Mark, you were involved from the very beginning with NRCA on this pro certification.
Yeah, well, the champion of that program obviously is Reed Ribble, who's done just a phenomenal job listening to the market, bringing that kind of capability out there. And I was able to build a coalition within the metal roofing community that took some of the key leaders in that community to partner and Reed really advocated and allowed that to happen, which was, just shows you the power of the NRCA and their willingness to help us, with our market, which I think is exciting for everybody, because it's a good thing if we all win if we can bring that more capability to these venues. So anyway, we were able to fast forward the NRCA pro certification with our community of folks within the MCA and the MRA. We were able to bring that forward and accelerate it, and that's that capability of having a pro cert that's brought forward by the NRCA. That training, those training materials, the technical acumen that they're bringing to that's what we need in the industry, and that's been I think that was a huge milestone for our market for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think when we're talking about really super, putting that big push on metal roofing, metal walls, a lot of people say, wait, we don't have the labor. We aren't able to get the installations done, but that's the part we're seeing change. MetalCon this year is going to have actual installers taking the assessment test to get certified during the show. And the MCA, Metal Construction Association, has been integral in working, the manufacturers in that are integral in working with NRCA with the pro certification. So there is an on push to get skilled labor certified. So if you're not aware of that out there, you can find all that information on NRCA or on MCA or on MetalCoffeeShop to be able to start getting some of your installers certified in metal. It's going to make a huge difference as we go through this.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, this is all, it's all tied together. It's all sort of feeding off each other. So I like the way that you talked about how this growth, it's sort of, there's like a chicken and egg element, right? So like how much labor do you really need? Well, if you go back to what we were talking about just a few minutes ago, and you talk about there's new ways to maybe sell and garner demand, it just forces this issue even more, right? So this installation piece is really the Manhattan Project for the metal roofing industry. It is the number one focus for us, and it has to be, because it can't just be we're serving the market that we're already serving, right? We in the metal roofing community, everyone knows how to serve the people who want a metal roof. It's when you start to say, well, what about those other folks that don't know they want a metal roof yet, and you want to sell to them? Well, you have to have the labor, right? So I think that we are seeing a shift in the industry towards this, and exactly what you're saying, for sure.
And I think it's interesting, Mark, too, when you really think about it, usually when you go into a market, you're worried about the demand, right? Do I have enough customers? Do I have enough demand? Well, with the work that the Metal Roofing Alliance, the Metal Construction Association, they have done so much work over the last decades to really drive that demand. And then just in general, the consumers want the sustainability, they want the energy efficiency, they want the durability of a metal roof. So the demand's there. Now we've got to meet it.
Yep, absolutely. And that's going to have to be it's sort of, we do have a very fractured market in terms of our manufacturing base, but it has to be, we all have to steer in the same direction. And I think we're starting to do that.
Yeah, I do too. So we had a little bit of a technical miscommunication there because I was thinking there was a poll coming up, but actually, we're going to ask everybody to, if you don't mind, type into the chat. We'd love to know where you're from, your location, and then what kind of company you have. So whether you're a contractor, a manufacturer, distributor, whatever you're doing, if you could just put that in the chat, that would be great. And we can kind of track that as we go. So we'll keep going with our information. And we will be taking questions and answers right at the end. So I see that there's one out there. Thank you so much. We will get to that. We're going to kind of go through these and then we're leaving plenty of time for questions because we know there's going to be a lot. So what we already had talked about a little bit was that need for training. And so Mark, it's not just installation, which we've already talked about a little bit, and skilled labor, but it's also now there's new ways of selling. There's new ways of running your business. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
I think the big difference there, the skilled labor training is obviously that is the Manhattan Project. That is the big deal. That is the choke point for growth, 100%. And beyond that, you also have this idea of selling. So we have our traditional market, and it's sort of like, what is a homeowner lead, right? And who are we selling? Like, what is our sales process? And have we thought about that? And I think in the metal roofing community in general, what we consider a homeowner lead is someone who says they want a metal roof, right? There's other markets, other communities of folks who don't really look at things that way, right? So they look at things like, well, this person that we've identified through these tools and practices may be interested in a premium product, and we're going to sell them on product B. Well, we probably want them to consider selling a metal roof with those sales process. And to do that, you have to have some fairly sophisticated sales training that frankly is not proliferated in our market today. And so I think that's just another opportunity. I think from a business standpoint, that business training is like you're saying, is hand in hand with that, right? So if you assume that we're going to move forward with this installation training, which is the foundation of basically everything, if you assume that we're going to drive demand through maybe some new channels for sales training, which are opportunities that exist, then it's logical to say, well, you're also going to need some business training for people who have not been in this, because there's a lot of nuances to metal, a lot, as anyone who's in it would tell you. And that business training, I think, is an important part to it. So yeah, all these things fit together to define what will our growth be over the next 5 to 10 years.
Right. And I think too, one of the things that we have found through Roofers Coffee Shop and now through Metal Coffee Shop is that contractors are thinking one way, right? They're thinking, I just need to do asphalt shingles, or I just need to do tile, or I just need to do certain types of siding. Whereas the market is demanding more choices. They are demanding that they want to hear what is the durability of all of these products. And then, so with that, like you said, on the business training side of it, well, first of all, on the sales side, it's a different sell. And on the business side too, you need to make sure that profitability, that you're estimating the right way, that everything is coming together to be very profitable with these new types, or if you've never done metal before. So for those who, I know I'm seeing in the chat, we have a lot of architects, we have a lot of general contractors. So really talking to your subs, also talking to your wall contractors, talking to your roofing contractors to really understand, have they had the training that is going to support what you want to do? how are they going to use these technologies to get out there is really, really fundamental. And taking us to our next our next slide is really, how are they running the project? How are they running the, and as a general contractor, how are you taking it from the very beginning to the end? So we're going to talk a little bit about and how a business is more profitable through project compression. And I'm going to actually turn that one. I'm going to just start with you, Mark, because this, you know what, this better than anybody.
Yeah, so this really is where I think there's a lot of opportunity for the metal roofing community in this to address this specifically, right? And so when you look at prospecting and sales, you know, this is just a basic workflow that everybody, whether you've mapped it out or not, this is a workflow that's well known in the community. And when you start on the left side of it, it starts with gaining efficiency in things like homeowner leads, right? And in our market, there's a lot of traditional things that are used, whether that's waiting for the phone to ring or waiting for an email from if someone wants a metal roof, all the way to what we would think is fairly sophisticated to using something like SEO, search engine optimization, right? Direct marketing campaigns on a billboard or TV or radio. But there's other markets that are using tools that are far, far more sophisticated than we're currently using generally in our market. Things like using artificial intelligence and sophisticated consumer data mining tools to target individual people, right? Based on a set of very, very complex parameters. Our competitors, to metal, like the asphalt roofing community and the remodeling community in general, are using these tools and have been using them for some time. And so there's a massive opportunity there to do that. Changing the mindset of sort of, waiting for a lead to come in to aggressively pursuing B2C sales like the remodeling community does, and using those sales processes. And those sales processes, to many in our community, are going to be uncomfortable, right? They're going to be something we're not familiar with. They're quite alien from my experience, but there's another opportunity there, right? Things like visualization, when you start to think of a sales funnel, when you start to think of markets as sort of math versus what we would traditionally look at them like, when you start to say, well, this market has this many people that could potentially buy a premium product. One of those premium products could be roof, and you segment that, right? And you say, okay, well, now I'm going to refine that, the probability of that. I'm going to refine that into a funnel to appointments and closures, right? Once you have that, it requires that you have the sales training to go pursue that type of a lead, and you can increase your closure rate with things like in-home visualization. And in-home visualization, though not widely used in our community, is something that's been used in other markets quite well for many, many years, right? So there's an opportunity to put more metal roofs on houses. And then when you look at things that I think the MRA has been doing quite well for a long time, building communities of people to talk about metal, right? We just haven't necessarily reached out to others that other disparate groups of people to pull them in as aggressively as we might want to. And so growing our community, growing the community of people that we talk to is a really important element of that. And also decreasing the uncertainty of bidding, estimating, and ordering is a huge deal. And there are tools and practices and processes that have been in place with the asphalt community for many, many years that we just, until recently, haven't been able to take advantage of. So when you put all that together, those are the digital side of the equation. And then the really the key part when we talk about the center of that, looking at installation, right? Getting furnish and install, getting the roof on the house in a reliable way, having a reliable material distribution path. The only people that can do that, the only people on this earth that can do that are called manufacturers. Sherwin-Williams can't do that. None of the digital people can do that. And I would say on this whole map, that's probably, if you assign percentages, right, like out of 100%, that's 90% is handled by the manufacturer. So the implication then is that the manufacturers are likely going to have to change their relationships in the given market, expand who they have relationships with to change the market, period. And what the digital tools allow for is to make that transition a little bit less painful, a little bit more seamless, a little bit more efficient, or maybe a lot more efficient. But without that manufacturer in the center of that, there is no new model.
Yeah.
Nothing.
And I think, you know, when we're looking at that, and you put the architectural community in that too, with the architects who are coming in here, this is really key. I mean, working with contractors, whether they are more general contractors who are doing more of a sales and working in residential and commercial, or whether you're working more with the sub-trades, people who are doing more installation every day, selling and installation. But for the architects who are on this call, looking at working with contractors who are able to have this job compression of really understanding how to go to market, using the technologies, which we're going to go over in just 2 seconds, using the technologies to be able to understand the sales process, then to understand the estimating process with measure, bid, and contacts, and then being able to working with the manufacturers to get all that information there, the planning and scheduling, the installation. That's kind of what we were talking about earlier, is the margin confidence for these contractors. Those are the ones you want to be working with. They're the ones who can really take care of those customers and put it, whether it's new construction or re-roofs or remodels, whatever it may be. So that time savings of using the technologies is key. So yeah, go ahead, Mark.
It's a combination, to your point, of physical and digital integration, right? Without the physical, and you know, today, I think in large part the metal roofing community is very fragmented in terms of how we supply the market, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we serve our market quite well. In fact, the metal roofing market doesn't need me or anyone else to tell it how to do our job, because it's done quite well. We're putting roofs on houses every day, all over the country. It's some of the best products in the world. What we're talking about is how you grow it, right? And to grow it, there has to be more efficiency. There's got to be new relationships that have to be built to address growth, basically, is what we're talking about.
Yeah. And that's what's happening. So let's talk about some of those technologies, Mark, that we're seeing that are as part of this model that we're looking at right now and are going to make a huge difference. We're going to pass that poll question, but these are what we're kind of calling the future technologies, but that are happening today. So things that we may have thought, especially pre-COVID, that, well, is it really something that is going to happen in the next 5-10 years? It's happened, and it's working, and it's happening right now. And actually other industries have been using these technologies. So one of the first ones, and we've already talked about that, is the digital communities that are out there. Pre-COVID, you saw, I mean, Roofers Coffee Shop's 20 years old. So it's been around, we've been online, but the metal industry has had work through the associations, has been very active with MetalCon. But when you look at that, it has just progressed like crazy in the last 3 to 4 years. So being part of a digital community, whether that's Metal Coffee Shop, where you can get the information, you can talk to people, you can network. And we're talking about architects talking to contractors, talking to manufacturers, talking to service suppliers, talking to technology companies. It's not these small little sections anymore. It's a whole community that needs to come together to meet the demand that consumers are requesting. And part of that, and we're actually going to have another slide later on, but it's also, how do you bring these online communities together to really create that job process? And that's MetalVue, which has just been launched by Sherwin-Williams. So Mark, if you want to talk to us a little bit about that and move into the next technologies.
Well, I think that the concept of MetalVue is, 100% dependent upon manufacturers who want to build different and new relationships in the market for growth, right? And when they do that, when they make that decision, there has to be a digital infrastructure to provide value to their customers, to provide additional efficiency. And that's really the concept of MetalVue. Is just an umbrella platform of what do you call this new thing that is really centered around a new vendor community of a new vendor network of folks to add value to the manufacturer. Because again, without the manufacturer, there's no program, there's nothing, right? So it's just a supporting infrastructure for these manufacturers to support growth. And really that's what's exciting. And as we move forward into 2023, the vendor community is just going to grow, right? Because you have to grow it, and you have to continue to add to allow the manufacturer to add value to their customer base.
Yeah, and one of the things, and this is going to apply no matter what business you're in, is as we're looking to the future with artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence, you hear that AI, you hear it all the time. It's been in the movies, but it's happening right now, every day. And one of the big areas, and again, this is for any business, but one of the big areas that AI has really taken off in is lead generation. And that's the ability to really define and have the computer system, the AI, help to gather definite markets for you. So if you're an architect, if you're a contractor, if you're a manufacturer, you're going to have certain markets where you excel. But you may have always thought in the past that, well, it has to be only people who are asking for metal. Now you can go out and through this artificial intelligence, you can find markets where they would be a good fit for metal. Totally different way of looking at it, and being able to work with the consumers, residential or commercial, who are looking at high-end, performance-driven, durable roofing, and go to them and say, we have the solution. And that's what we're seeing with companies like Spectrum, where there's a number of companies out there who are able to deliver that kind of lead generation through artificial intelligence. And that is all part, everything we're going to be talking about is also part of that MetalVue program. But it's not just MetalVue, it's across the country, or across the industry. So you want to be looking out there for different companies and ask them, how are you generating leads? What are you finding? If this is new construction, and what kind of homeowners, what kind of properties, what do they want? Where do they live? What's the region? All of those, all that data goes in to find the perfect people for you to approach.
Yeah, I think that what really kind of blew my mind was when you dip your toe in this water with these different communities, how far along they've come, and how much we're not leveraging, basically. And that just absolutely is a little shocking the first time you see it. Traditionally in our market, we're looking at it's very difficult to close the loop on, hey, I spent, X amount of dollars on a billboard. And then what does that mean? And I spent, I've got SEO, and that makes it a little bit more granular. You can get hits and everything like that. But with these types of programs out there, with the companies that are doing this work, it is a direct line of sight, right? You're talking about, I spent this money, I booked this many appointments, I closed this many sales, and you can see it on a dashboard. Like, it's pretty straightforward. And the way that you're targeting these people is incredibly efficient with the ad spend, right? Regionally, it can be adjusted. It's very flexible. And so when you see ad spend, and I've seen it, and how tailorable it is to an individual market, you can't really compete with it, right? You're not. Right. It doesn't mean you only do that. I mean, you do a bunch of other things, but the way that some of these different customers look at ad spend and market spend, they're just basically, it's very simple. It's what's your cost of sales, right? They're saying, well, if I'm not, 10% cost of sales, if I'm not, 8% cost of sales, or depending on the region, the market, company, then what's the point? But if you map that out and you map out the ad spend that these people are making, it starts to show you that, for example, in the remodeling community, there's a subset of the remodeling community, like, that's, $7.6 billion of gross sales, like last year, 2020, that represented, 600,000 unique jobs, right? So in the metal roofing community, what the question we have to ask is, well, how many of those jobs do we want them to how many times do we want them to upsell metal roof? Well, the answer is more than zero. And,
Yeah.
and then the way they're getting those jobs is through this type of ads of sophisticated ad spend. The is out there too. That's been out there. There's very sophisticated approaches that have been out there. Companies like EagleView is the behemoth of the asphalt industry. It's not a new company. They've been doing this for a long time. We just, and I think we've been taking some advantage of it, but not to the extent that it is truly available until now.
And what's really interesting, Mark, because I was actually part of the, as you know, I was part of the startup with EagleView, and there was quite a bit of time in there where, because of the precision cuts, how important the precision cuts of metal and the metal roofing or metal walls is, the technology wasn't catching up. And so now when you're looking at visualization or and what we were just talking about with artificial intelligence, that has come into play with companies like EagleView and other companies out there who are doing aerial photography. Then they are able to create 3D models from that, a lot of times using artificial intelligence. And they are able to, from those 3D models, have incredibly precise measurements that are now being used to cut the metal. It is going straight to the manufacturers, and they are able to create those panels and everything that's needed for that roof. And also for other types of metal products that are out there, whether it's metal shingles, whatever it may be, they're using this type of aerial imagery in 3D technology. You also have other technologies out there, and you just want to be aware of those. There are people ability to use your phones. And so as you know, when I'm looking at all the people in here with the architectural community, you want to make sure that you have definitely done your research, working with your contractors, working with these, especially if you're doing remodels or, re-roofs, because not all of the technology out there has the precision needed for metal. Some of them do great and some of them don't. I'm not going to say which one. I'm not the expert on that. I just worked in it for a while, but I do know that really doing your research and asking, how are these measurements coming? How can they work with metal? And making sure that homeowners or business owners are seeing those same kind of things. Nothing's more impressive than having a 3D model put out there and saying, this is what your roof looks like. This is what your walls, this is the building envelope. And this is how it's going to look later on through that visualization, through the visualizers, which Mark, you've done a lot, as we were just talking about with the visualizers.
Yeah, I think going back to the bidding and estimating, I mean, no one's going to take on the liability of the contractors, the need for the contractor to take on the liability for putting the material on the roof, right?
True.
They ultimately have to check that, and what's changed is the confidence level for the type, because of the accuracy that you're talking about, has changed. So that, what does that really translate to? It translates to the delta between an initial estimate and an order is incredibly small, right? And and then you have some known points to check, and so it makes the bidding and ordering tightly integrated, which means the contractor's job is they can be much more efficient in how they're spending their time and how they choose to approach an estimate to an order, right? So that's the big deal. And you do have the opportunity to integrate into the ordering process, which makes everything much more efficient. And you have confidence that when you place that order, you're going to get the material that's the right material. So that's all really, really important for our community to take advantage of. I think with everybody sort of honing in on common files like these XML files that do have 3D data. Yeah, you do not want to rely on 2D data for a metal roof. And it's just, I think the asphalters can do that. I mean, and the answer, why is that? Well, the answer is because of the Z plot, right? So when you have to use XY all day, but if you don't have the Z right, it's a problem. And so XML is a common file that captures that, and there's a number of folks that are producing these with varying degrees of accuracy. But really, that's the difference between metal and asphalt in a nutshell. Is your Z plot is you've really got to have an accurate Z, to produce quality, quality, accurate cut lists, right, to do that. So that's important. The ability to process data, like whether it's just punching in an address, whether it's consuming plans, drawings, blueprints, back of a napkin that a contractor drew, or a raw XML file that someone produced. It's the technology is out there to consume that data very quickly, right? And that's what's going to make contractors' lives easier. That's going to make the metal roofing market more approachable for people, because that technology is now available and it really wasn't as accessible just a few years ago.
And Mark, it's not just the taking all this information, whether it's address, plans, or XML. It's about once you get that information, it helps with the estimating process, transparency for the consumers to be able to really show them that what's going on, and then working with the manufacturers. So a lot of times what we're seeing before these technologies is numbers would be entered several times. And of course, there's always going to be problems with that. And so numbers would be off. Whereas in this case, and in these flows with technology, using this type of program, like a passport program, which we're going to talk about in a minute, or using some of these types of job progress workstations and the way they go through, it's able to go from the very beginning, from when you talk to that customer, or you talk to an architect, or you talk to a general contractor, and these contractors are able to take it all the way through to the very end without having a redundant data entry, and it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And that's exactly right. So there's a big difference between if you have a simple structure, right, the risk can be very low. Like if you've got a couple of roof planes on a residential structure that's 20, 30 squares, I mean, okay, run, right? But not all roofs are created equal. You start talking about having 40 different roof planes on a multi-level structure. If you're bidding that out and saying, well, it's this many per square, I mean, you could be wrong. And so when you enter it in, and then you have high confidence in that initial estimate, and the delta between the estimate and order is very low, that's what you're looking for. And that's what these technologies, they do. They minimize the number of touches going into that. Yeah.
And I think it's important too that the overall metal community really honestly look for contractors and installers who are using these type of technologies and who are making building their business around that type of transparency and efficiencies.
Yep, I agree.
So how you look for those, and this is one of the things that we have been focused on at Roofers Coffee Shop, and now we are highly focused on it at Metal Coffee Shop, is to really be able to bring these kind of topics, this kind of information daily, whether it's technologies, new types of engineering for metal, for machinery, you name it. It is on Metal Coffee Shop, and it's with articles every day, with ongoing education, but also a place where the metal industry can do business, right? Find each other. Find if architects are looking for contractors, if contractors are looking for general contractors, if installers are looking to work with more exterior contractors. This is the place where the networking and the ability to bring that in comes together. And so as we put together this final slide, which is really going to summarize all of this, and that is the MetalVue, we knew that online communities was going to be incredibly important in order to continue getting the information out there and continuing to network all the people who are trying to put these processes together. And so I can't take any credit for the next slide, except for just being lucky enough to be a part of it. But Sherwin-Williams put together this process, and it's called MetalVue. It was launched last month, and this is out there right now for contractors, for the metal community, manufacturers, everyone to be a part of. And for the architectural community, this is incredibly important because it's going to be bringing the professionalism of the industry and the ability to put more metal roofs on to an extreme. So Mark, why don't you walk us through this slide?
So starting finishing like we started the whole discussion, it starts with the homeowner. If we assume that the bedrock is the manufacturer, which it is. And the bedrock of this is the manufacturer's relationship with new customers, right? So we assume that. Then what's the digital infrastructure to support that relationship? Well, it starts with homeowner leads, because without homeowners, we don't have a program, right? So using sophisticated sales tools, an example of that would be Spectrum for homeowner lead generation that's targeted on individual homeowners using consumer information that is otherwise not used in any of our marketing processes. So this type of technology has been out there for many years and used to great advantage in other markets, just not ours. And now it's starting to be used. Different types of, one visit close sales process that, B2C selling. Our market traditionally just doesn't do that. We do a lot of really B2B selling. We do quite well, and no one needs me or anyone else to help them with B2B selling, because it's a thing that we do quite well. One visit close selling to a homeowner is something we traditionally do not do and is alien. And there are people like out there like Grosso University that are very, very good at it, respected in the community, and can bring that value, that training to bear. And that's a very powerful tool for growth, right? There's no question that these processes work, as evidenced by the multi-billion-dollar remodeling industry that's been doing this for, I don't know, many, many decades, and refining it and refining it and refining it. We just haven't taken advantage of it. Roofing Passport, great example of vendor relationships, right? So this is building relationships with EagleView, building relationships with a company called Smart Build, right? Building relationships with Sherwin-Williams, providing that integration front end, building relationships with companies like Roofing Works, right? Bringing those all together with one integrated tool that can process any of the data that you need. That technology hasn't existed for us, right? It isn't frankly needed by the asphalt community, but the metal community can take advantage of it. So the cool part of this is that every day that progresses, we learn new things and we can build new capability with technology to make our customers, our manufacturers' lives easier, which makes their customers' lives easier. Visualization. This is not a new concept. Visualization's been around for a while. There's a company called RentalWorks that's been out there with a lot of the major manufacturers in our industry for quite some time. The interesting thing isn't that RentalWorks exists, right? The interesting thing is that in this particular vendor community, suddenly it gets much more interesting, right? Because now if you do have someone that's actually sitting down with a homeowner trying to close that sale with a metal roof and they have a visualizer, suddenly you have a completely different opportunity than we've really had in the past. So becomes a very interesting thing. Then finishing with the networks, we've had people that have spent a lot of time and money building communities that we need, like the Metal Roofing Alliance is a fantastic community, but we can't stop there. We have to continue pushing the envelope, and that's where MetalCoffeeShop comes in as a great place for some of these new customers to come in and network. And I think that you have to do all these things. You can't do one, you can't do two. You have to provide these as a menu of options for these new customers that we want to drive growth, right? And without a place for them to network, you just can't do it.
Right. And that networking, and again, when you're looking at the technologies, we really want to talk about, there's a lot of different technologies out there, but the trick is bringing it together. One of the things we talk about a lot is the tech stack for contractors. And that's not going to be any different from architects. You're going to have a tech stack in your business of things that you have to use. So getting the pieces of that technology together that work together, that make one complete process from the very beginning to the very end. And that's one of the things that when you look at this, it's very exciting. Through Roofing Passport, everything funnels in and works all the way through, including the lead generation, the EagleView, or whoever you may be doing your aerial imagery measurements, and then the estimating, and then the manufacturers are also coming into that too. So it creates this entire process through. So however you do it, which with whatever programs you use, you want to think about that tech stack and how it's really delivering for your business and how much redundancy do you have or do not have, because redundant data entry is a killer. And so finally, as we finished up with that, the online communities, we're very excited for Metal Coffee Shop to be here for everyone. I'm just going to put in a plug for MetalCon, because MetalCon is front and center, and so is Metal Roofing Alliance and Metal Construction Association and the NRCA, National Roofing Contractor Association, are all a part of Metal Coffee Shop. And that is a place where you can go to be able to get that information as you need it. Also, you can sign up and register for MetalCon on there too. So I just want to make sure everybody's going to be there, because we're going to be there. We're going to be at MetalCon. Those are the technologies really that from the sale to the estimating to the measurements, all the way to the end to the online digital communities. Those are the new technologies that are happening right now today, and that we all want you to be aware of. You can hear about all of these on Metal Coffee Shop. And so we want to open it up to questions at this point. And I did have a question. This one was not in the chat, but it came in through the side here. But Mark, one of the questions was, as contractors who want to get involved, how do they get involved in MetalVue?
So so I think it's maybe a two-part answer, right? So the first part is how does a contractor get involved in metal roofing? Well, the answer is always going to be work with a participating manufacturer, right? And the question is, what do you want to do with that participating manufacturer? Do you want to be a new customer for them? If that's the case, you can reach out to me directly or Heidi, and we can, just let us know what part of the country you're in, kind of what your interests are, and we can help align you with who's in that market. So that's not a problem. For the MetalVue program specifically, that is to be a participant in that community as a contractor. We have a very specific definition for participating contractors, which is basically what we're referring to as a tier 1 contractor. So to participate in that program, you would have to have, it starts with a call center. What we've seen in the past is that if you do not have a call center, you are not a tier 1 contractor typically. And so meaning that when someone calls you, do you have someone that's going to answer the phone, right? Guaranteed. If you don't have that, think about as a homeowner, if you call a plumber and they don't answer, what do? Answer is you call the next plumber. So that's why people have call centers. And a call center can be like 2 people, one person with some software or whatever. But in any case, if you don't have a call center, you're not a tier 1. And then the rest of the thing kind of falls from there. So you'll have tier 1s will typically have CRM. They'll have one visit close sales processes. They'll have guaranteed sort of appointment or best practice 48-hour appointment booking, 72-hour in the home visit. They'll have all of those things. They bring in financing. They'll have a relationship with a finance company. So if you don't have all those things that I just mentioned, you're not a tier 1 contractor and would not participate in the MetalVue program.
But for those who are installers, to kind of take that to the next step of how to get involved, this is where you can start getting those types of things, right? So by going to Metal Coffee Shop, by going to MetalCon, you can start talking to some of these software and these technology companies and figure out what you need for a CRM, figure out what you need for for training, for installation for your crews. Or maybe you are an amazing metal installer already. You are doing great things, but you want to grow your business. This is a great way to do it. And it's really for any contractor to get involved with more manufacturers. So if you're on this webinar and you're not doing metal, but you're on the webinar because you want to do metal, this is a perfect opportunity for you to get involved. And all of that you can find on manufacturers, you can find the technologies, you can find everything on Metal Coffee Shop, and you can definitely find it when you go to MetalCon in the fall. So one of the best ways to determine what type of contractor you are in a lot of ways is how you view homeowner leads, right? So if I said a homeowner lead is defined as a homeowner calls you up and says, hello, I would like a metal roof, and that to you is a homeowner lead,
then I would say you're probably a traditional metal roofing contractor. If on the other hand, a lead looks something like a software program has told you that a specific person in a market that you've targeted is likely to buy a premium product at some point, and you don't consider that a lead, you're probably not a tier 1 contractor. But a tier 1 contractor would look at that and say, yes, that is a fantastic lead for one of my sales reps. So it's sort of like the homeowner lead is the basis of how you look at a particular homeowner lead and define it, has a lot to do with your business model, basically.
I think also, Mark, on the business model side of it too, there's a lot of amazing companies out there doing either roofing or siding, walls, all metal, and they are not that interested in the whole sales side of it or following those homeowner leads to that level, to cold call.
And they don't need to for their business.
You don't need to, because you are needed so much. And that is also where you need to make that connection to some of these more general contractors, possibly architectural design build firms who are looking for skilled labor. And it is so important out there. So
yes.
Yeah, there's a lot to do, but I think we are at the end of our hour.
Well, appreciate the opportunity. Going back to Judy at MetalCon, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And Heidi, thanks for having me today. Appreciate it.
Thank
you. You all. Yeah, thank you all for being here and for joining us today. A very special thank you both to Heidi and Mark. And if you guys do have questions, all of our attendees moving forward, you can always shoot an email to either myself or you can shoot an email to RoofersCoffeeShop. Heidi, I'm sure will be happy to answer any questions if you can get in touch with them through their website. That would be amazing.
Yes.
Again, thank you everybody for listening today and for joining us. If you are an AIA member, expect to receive that credit coming within the next 10 business days. Your certificates will be processed and sent out immediately following this. So expect those before the end of this week. Again, thank you everybody for joining us today. We so appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you at MetalCon in a few short months. Or
thank you.
In 2 months. Thank you. Have a great one, everybody. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.